Today, we'll be looking at the topic beat reporting. Now, beats are an inherent component of the newsroom. Why do we have beats? Why do editors assign reporters to beats? We'll be looking at a few of these elements. Beat reporting is an inherent method, it's a procedure used in newsrooms. Whether it's a newspaper, a television station, whether it's new media, beat reporting is absolutely essential to how a newsroom functions. We'll be looking at a few elements such as what is a beat, why do we cover beats, why are reporters assigned to beats, and we'll be looking at a few tips to cover some common beats. Beat reporting has been an essential part of newsrooms from time immemorial. There are many new methods now with new media. You can go to Twitter, you can go to Instagram to get sources. You can have many different ways to contact sources. So many things have changed, but beat reporting will never go away from newsrooms. So a beat is a specific area or a topic that is assigned to a reporter by an editor so that the reporter develops expertise in the area and makes sure that that particular area is covered no matter what news development comes along, that particular area is covered by this particular reporter. We have heard of beat cops, we have heard of police who are assigned to a particular geographic area. Similarly, and that policeman is responsible for covering that area. It's just the same principle. Similarly, a particular beat, when it is assigned to a reporter, that reporter is responsible for covering that particular area. It can be a topic. We have heard of beats such as politics, entertainment, etc. Or in some news organizations, it can be a particular geographic area, right? So in some news organizations, they cover a particular region. So a beat can be a few towns or a few villages that are assigned to a particular reporter. So that is a beat, and that is the principle of beat reporting. So what are some common beats? We've all seen these in newspapers. We've all seen these topics covered. Politics is, of course, a huge one. It's a very important beat. Then we have government. You can cover local government, state government, national government. That is, at state government level, you can be assigned to assembly. So day in, day out, you'll be reporting from the assembly, the proceedings of the assembly. Or if you're operating from the center, you'll be reporting on the parliament throughout. These are very specialized beats and mostly assigned only to veteran reporters. And then you have courts. Once again, a very specialized beat. You need to have some knowledge of law, and you need to know court procedures, etc. The police, crime is a very huge beat for many newspapers, many news organizations. You have education, entertainment, business, science and technology. So genres like these are endless. So these are all beats, right? Now, why beats? This is a good question. In a news organization, the editor has to make sure that no news gets missed out, right? So that's why beat reporting, when a reporter is assigned to a beat, it becomes very useful to the news organization. The reporter develops specialized expertise. By covering the beat over and over again, they get to know a lot about that particular subject matter, right? As I said, some beats, when the reporter is assigned to the beat, they come in with some specialized knowledge. Law is one example, right? In very good newspapers, lawyers are in fact recruited. Those who have interest in journalism, they are recruited and made the law correspondent. Similarly, science and technology, if you have a degree in science, you come in with that extra knowledge so you can cover this subject, right? But many beats, you come in and you learn on the job, and when you cover it months and years together, you develop a lot of expertise in that particular area. Then you cultivate sources. As you know, sources are extremely important for journalists. When you keep working in a particular subject matter, you keep talking to the important people who matter in that particular topic, and therefore you develop a familiarity with them, And even when your colleagues in the paper, right? So for example, let's say a business person buys a sports franchise, right? And the sports reporter wants to get in touch with this businessman. So who do they reach out to? They reach out to the business reporter, right? Because the business reporter has developed these sources, cultivated these sources, and knows the people in that subject area, right? Then you are accountable to the organization. The editor has to make sure that this particular news development is covered. If you miss out, as a beat reporter, if you miss out on covering it and the rival newspaper has covered it, the editor will know whom to ask, right? So therefore, you are accountable to the organization. And then you are the contact person for tipsters or the public who want to reach out to the paper, right? Or reach out to the news organization. They know exactly whom they have to reach out to because they've been seeing your byline. They have been seeing your name attached to news developments in this particular subject matter. They know that Ms. Madhumita at this paper is the person to reach out to if they have some tip or if they want some, if they have some information for you for some news development, right? So these are some reasons why beat reporting is very common in newspapers and other news organizations. Now we'll be looking at some principles for beat reporters. So it helps to be prepared always as a reporter, develop broad awareness of this subject area. It helps to really read a lot, read everything you can about this subject. Definitely read some 5 different newspapers, 5 different news magazines. It helps to read trade magazines, special magazines printed for this particular subject matter, blogs, of course, follow experts on social media, on Twitter, so you can know a lot about this subject, right? And if you are suddenly brought into this beat, then it helps to talk to your predecessor, talk to your senior to know what has been going on in this particular area, what are the news developments, who are the subjects to talk to, who are the experts to talk to. These are the things that you will have to do. Read for background information, do your online research. That goes without saying. In this day and age, Google is at your fingertips. Just read as much as you can about the beat. Understand the laws that govern this particular beat. If you take business, if you're covering, let's say, municipality, there are tons of laws that govern that particular beat, right? It really helps to have these at your fingertips. Talk to sources, talk to subject experts, talk to them over time. If you are new to a beat, it helps to simply set up appointments with subject experts so that, you know, simply go and introduce yourself, have a chat with them. This is not with the idea of getting a story for the paper or for the news organization, but simply to know more about this subject. And many people will oblige, right? People like to talk. They will definitely oblige your request for an interview simply to introduce yourself and know more about the subject. So another principle, very important one, is to be alert. These are some essential questions that you have to keep asking yourself no matter what beat you're covering, right? First of all, who will benefit from this particular move and who will be hurt, right? Who are the beneficiaries and who are the possible victims? So that will tell you who are the parties that you may have to talk to. Next. How important is this? Is this huge? Who are the particular sources you'll have to talk to? How much time, how much effort will you have to dedicate to covering this particular news development? Who is for this? Who is against it? You will have to know who are the parties that support this particular move and who might be against it, right? This is an essential principle of journalism. In order to be completely objective, you'll have to talk to all sides of a particular issue, right? And therefore, this question is very important. You'll have to know who are the parties and what are their positions with regard to this particular news development. Very important question. This is about money. How much is this going to cost and who is going to pay the bill, right? This will tell you exactly which parties you'll have to identify again in order to identify as sources, right? In order to complete your reporting. So that's about being alert. Let's look at the next principle. Be persistent. again, very important for all journalists. All stories are not going to jump into your lap, right? You'll have to keep tracking it over time. You'll have to be extremely persistent. Do not forget there are many day-to-day duties that you'll have to have, that you'll have to perform. In the midst of that, never lose sight of this long developing story that has not yet fully developed, right? You'll have to keep pursuing, keep making those phone calls so that you bring it to fruition. Track slow-moving projects or problems. As I said, never lose sight of it. Be there, right? It's very important nowadays in this day of social media to simply look at Twitter and report what this person tweeted and that person tweeted, right? But good old-fashioned beat reporting requires that you are there, you make yourself visible to your sources, right? Nothing beats in-person reporting wherever possible, right? Make yourself part of the community. So suppose you are covering education, right? So it helps to go attend an annual day, a sports day, so that the schools that you are covering know that you are interested in them, right? Whether good or bad times, you are there, you are part of the community. Do a favor whenever you can, right? So let's say, again, with the same example, a school calls you, they want you to connect them to the advertising department. You make that effort, right? Don't say, you know, I'm too busy, I can't do it, right? So when you do that favor, you make yourself a more friendly presence to them, right? This is not to say you are a friend. Always, everybody knows sources are not your friends, but they will view you more favorably. That's the purpose. Do not shun good news. So once again, a teacher gets a national award, right? A best teacher award. You may say, this is not really worth my while. You might think that, but it is good news and you lose nothing. On a slow news day, you lose nothing by actually covering that particular news development. So in the times you really want to reach out to them, they will remember that you have been there, right? You have been interested in them, whether it's good news or whether it's bad news, right? And therefore, it's important to, as I said, make yourself really interested in this particular topic, this particular ecosystem that you are covering. Protect your sources, and this veteran reporters will tell you is extremely important, right? You develop credibility, right? By being a person, a reporter with integrity, people will respect you, right? You don't, so suppose they request anonymity, right? They say, do not print my name. Respect that, right? Tell your editor, this particular source does not want to be named for this particular reason, right? If you throw them under the bus, you do not respect their request, then they won't talk to you again, right? They'll lose their respect for you, right? Therefore, it's very important to protect your sources and, of course, be accurate. This is essential for any reporter, but it also helps you develop that closeness with the source, right? Be precise, be accurate, be fair. You don't have to do them any favors. Just report whatever you have noted down, report it accurately, right? So these are essential principles. And of course, all that said, be friendly, all that is there, but definitely be wary, right? Remember to maintain that distance between you and the subject that you are covering, right? Take everything with a pinch of salt and avoid thinking like an insider. When you are covering a business, you are not the business, right? Beginner reporters, particularly novice students, I have seen students write as if they were the business, right? They would say, we launched a new soap, etc., right? Of course, you have to remember that you are an outsider reporting on this news development, right? That mindset will help you to always identify the issue and report it accurately, objectively. Crucial factors for beat reporters. We looked at some principles, but these are essential no matter what beat you are covering. Information is power, as you know, and you are in the business of imparting information, right? So get to know the power center. Get to know who is the real decision maker. You may not be able to talk to them all the time. You may be able to talk to a subordinate or other stakeholders, but definitely get to know who is the power center, and eventually, by working in the beat for a few months, years, and proving yourself, you may get to actually talk to the power center. Follow the money, study the budget. This is almost folklore in journalism. Some of you may have heard of the Watergate scandal. This was a scandal that rocked American politics in the 70s. It went all the way up to the president. Richard Nixon was the president at that time. And this particular principle is immortalized in the book that came out of that particular episode and also the movie that followed. It's called All the President's Men. You may want to look it up if you're interested. In that movie, a couple of young reporters follow this particular scandal. It's, of course, based on true events. And they have an informer inside the government who keeps telling them, follow the money, right? So it has become folklore. So this is such an important principle in journalism. And when you are covering a beat, this is something you have to remember. And distributing power and money is, of course, politics, right? So these two principles, if you remember and if you keep these top of mind, you will become a great political reporter, right? You will shine in the beat of politics. Right, now let's look at some individual beats and just go through some really useful tips to cover each of these individual beats. So first, it's city and state government. As I said, you may not always be able to talk to the power center, but you may be able to talk to subordinate officers, right? So scope out subordinate administrators, politicians, office holders, IAS officers, for example, clerks, other people who work in a particular department. Whoever is more forthcoming, right, volunteers information, they are your sources. Pressure groups, right? So different groups that are driving different agendas, they can become important sources for you, right? Of course, you cannot be objective if you keep talking to only one pressure group, right? You also have to develop contacts within some other pressure group that has an agenda that may be opposed to this one. So for example, land developers / conservationists, right? So for example, on the one hand, you have people who want to develop land and build office buildings, residential buildings. On the other hand, you have conservationists who want to maintain green spaces, right? It helps to have sources in both of these pressure groups. Then you have, say, personnel directors in companies, right? HR managers. And on the other hand, you have union leaders, right? The head of the workers, right? So it helps to have sources in both of these pressure groups. So that will help you tell the story, that will help you get information before anybody else does, that will help you get tips, right? So if you are in a hurry to get a quote, right, reaching out to these sources that you develop in these various pressure groups can help you actually reach out to the decision maker, the power center, right? For all these reasons, it's very important to keep talking to these kinds of sources. Then you have public citizens. Public citizens are so important. Nowadays, particularly with RTI, there are so many public-minded people who keep filing RTI petitions, right? It helps to know these people, and the good thing is they are extremely accessible to reporters. They want to talk to reporters, make information public, right? And therefore, they are great people to talk to, right? And then you have behind-the-scenes advisors. Some people do not actually work in government, but because they have subject matter expertise, they can be advising the government, right? And these people might be a little more accessible than people who are actually in government, right? So when you are covering city or state government, it helps to know people in these various areas, to know these various stakeholders. And of course, opponents. So for any particular issue, there are opponents, or there are opposition party members, right? They are much more accessible at any point of time than ruling party members. So at any point of time, it helps to keep in touch with the opposition party. Of course, for objective reporting, and I keep reiterating this, extremely important to get all sides of a matter, but to reach out, to make that first contact, right? It helps to know these opposition party members. If you're covering the education beat, subscribe definitely to education newsletters. Visit parenting blogs, parenting forums, disability forums. This is a huge topic in education, whether it's schools, colleges. Do they make things easy for people with physical or mental disability to get educated, right? Because this is a huge topic, it helps also to keep tracking disability forums. Get to know RTE activists. So in our country, we have the right to education law, right? Even recently, it was in the news. So it helps to know these right to education activists, right? To track whether schools are actually implementing this, whether they are abiding by the right to education guidelines. Definitely talk to teachers, talk to students, make friends with them on social media, right? This is not to say stalk them, but some of them are more forthcoming, right? So definitely make contact with them, and it helps to know simply what they are talking about. This is not to get a scoop, but what is top of mind for students, right? What are their priorities? It helps to know. Yeah, establish contact on social media, then talk to psychologists, talk to tuition centers, which are huge, right? Besides schools, tuition centers are very big, a very important part of a student's life, right? And ed tech firms, right? Firms that offer extra tuition online, right? So these kinds of firms are also huge part of the education beat. So it also helps to have sources in these firms. So if you are covering the crime beat, right? So of course you have to talk to the police. And the police are the best source. The police have to be a source for you. You can't simply talk to the victims or the perpetrators, right? Because it's a very sensitive issue. Besides the police, you may talk to other sources as well. Definitely lend a sympathetic ear if you're talking to the victims, to the possible perpetrators. And when you're writing it, I have to mention this here, never forget to use the word alleged. Right? Everyone is an alleged victim or an alleged perpetrator unless they are convicted by the courts, right? So never forget that. Encourage conversation, right? It helps if a particular source is particularly tight-lipped, right? They're not volunteering information. Over time, it helps to develop this rapport with the police, right? It helps to keep, talking to them, making contact with them, establishing your good faith, right? Then you will encourage them to open up and talk to you. Talk to other police watchers, not just the police, but police watchers like the lawyers, prosecutors, etc. It helps to talk to all these stakeholders to find out what's going on. And remember that the police are not infallible, right? So it is a tendency of everybody, right, to respect authority figures, and the police are very big authority figures, right, similar to, let's say, judges, right? But it helps to remember that nobody is infallible, which means everybody makes mistakes, right? So definitely all the information that you get, remember to attribute it to whoever said it to you, right? Just because the police gave it to you doesn't make it fact, right? Remember to attribute this information by saying the police said, etc., right? When you're covering courts, many of these same principles hold good. Cultivate lawyers, other courts functionaries such as court clerks, right? In a system like ours, all the information is not available online. You won't know when a trial is scheduled, right? You won't know many of these facts. So it really helps to know court clerks to understand, say, for example, when the next hearing is going to be held, right? So for these reasons, it helps to know all these sources. Court records, right? So if you're coming in new to a particular case, right, or you're catching a hearing in between, then it helps to have these court records to find out exactly what happened previously, right? So these documents also become important. Yeah, once again, remember the judges are not infallible. Just because they are the authority figures and they hold court, right? They are the leaders of the court. Doesn't mean that they are always right. If you've heard of what is called the Innocence Project, you may, again, those interested may go look it up. The Innocence Project has actually been responsible for exonerating or bringing people out of jail who have been serving sentences for years and years together. So they have managed to find new evidence that has proven that these people are in fact innocent, right? So what I'm trying to say is what the judge says is final for that moment, but it doesn't make it the absolute truth or doesn't make it fact, right? So again, remember to always attribute this information to whoever said it to you, whatever authority figure said it to you, right? Science, technology, and the environment, these are, as I said, these are very specialized beats. So if you have an inclination for these beats, they can be easily available to you because these are, in fact, there are not many people who have the expertise or the knowledge to report on these subjects. So it may be easily up for grabs. What you can do is you can lend a local touch to a national story or an international story, right? So for example, if a science journal reports that the air quality is particularly bad, let's say in coastal areas. So if you live in a coastal city, you can take this information and go ask local scientists whether that is in fact the case, right? Whether in fact in coastal areas, the air quality is becoming bad, right? So that's one way of developing stories here. So definitely in this beat, it's important to read trade journals. It's important to read say, for example, medical journals. It's important to read technical journals, right? These are some places from where you can get story ideas. So fires, accidents, disasters, this can happen. This is not, of course, it's not a regular beat because these don't happen all the time, and whoever is available is sent for these, and sometimes the crime reporter or the police reporter is sent to cover these. These are important things to note down: names, addresses, ages, conditions of victims. Get police eyewitness accounts. Definitely ask when, where, why. Ask this of officials who are there, right? Not enough to ask eyewitnesses, right? It helps to have an official account. Definitely be sensitive. People have just been through a trauma, right? While you need to get your information, it helps not to badger the victims, right? Be very sensitive and develop that manner, right, in which you can talk to victims. Particularly, I just want to touch upon this. If you are covering a fire, get the name of the property owner, right? So whoever is renting the property, whoever is occupying the property at that time, they are, of course, going through that experience. But for other reasons behind the fire, you'll need to know who is the owner of the property, find out the value of the property, what are the contents that were lost, find out if there was fire insurance. You never know. There may be more to this particular story than meets the eye. So these are important things to know. Who reported it? How many firefighting personnel came to that particular scene? How many fire tenders or how many fire trucks reported to the area? If you remember seeing any fire report, you might have seen these details, right? This is important to cover. And what caused the fire according to the experts in that particular place, according to the authorities, what do they think caused the fire? Completing the reporting. So if you are covering a disaster, many reporters together may be covering a disaster. So if you are doing that, another thing that's important to do if you are doing a good job is to always do the secondary reporting, right? After everything is over, going back and looking what may have caused this particular thing, right? What may have caused this issue. These are some great examples. The Challenger disaster, some of you may know of this particular space shuttle that exploded on re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, right? So afterwards, there was a lot of going back, analyzing and finding out what caused it, right? These were huge stories for the reporters who were covering science and technology. Similarly, the Uttarakhand cloudburst tragedy, when sudden huge downpours caused landslides, flooding, etc. Were there meteorological warnings? Were there warnings against development of that particular area, right? These are all questions that need to be looked at after the disaster, right? So those are, again, important aspects of covering a disaster or covering any kind of accident like this one. Now we come to the conclusion of this module. Let's have a recap of the important subtopics that we looked at throughout this discussion. We looked at what is a beat. If you remember, a beat is a particular topic or a particular area that is assigned to a reporter by an editor to make sure that no news is missed out. We looked at why beats are useful. Beats, of course, are useful so that no news is missed out, as we said. There are reporters accountable to the news organization. They develop subject expertise. They develop intimacy, or they develop a good rapport with their sources, so they never forget, they never are at a loss in reaching out to experts who can inform them about what is going on in that particular beat. And tipsters or the public who want to reach out to the organization know whom they have to call if they have some information in that particular subject matter. Then we looked at some principles of beat reporting. We said, be informed, be prepared, be persistent, keep pursuing a story, but we said be wary, right? We said do not become too close to your sources while being friendly with them. Remember that they are people on whom you are reporting, right? Always take everything with a grain of salt. Remember to maintain that distance, that professional distance. And then we looked at some tips to cover some common beats such as politics, government, we looked at science and technology, we looked at education, we looked at covering the police, courts, fires, disaster reporting, etc. These were some of the topics that we discussed. I hope this session was useful. Thank you so much for the patient listening.